Everyone, we have a very special guest today. His name is Joseph Pearce. As you must know, he has written an enormous amount of essays, biographies, articles, conferences about big Catholic authors such as Chesterton, Lewis, Tolkien, Belloc. Anyone who reads your books, Joseph, and listen to your conferences can find the answers to the question we're about to make. Forgive us if we're being a bit repetitive, but this is just a way to introduce your thoughts and points of view for our audience in Latin America and Spain. And for those who have not had a chance to read your article approach to these authors, we will be especially focusing on Tolkien, because this is the reason we made Señor Bombadil website. We know, after reading your autobiography, Race with the Devil, that reading these authors, Chesterton first, then Lewis, Tolkien, and Belloc, planted on you the seed of faith. So the first question is, how can these authors, to anyone who is searching for the truth, lead us to faith, to consider God's existence?
Well, first of all, you can see that Chesterton is looking over my shoulder here and keeping an eye on me. It was Chesterton. I always say that under grace, and always give God the glory, but under grace, the biggest influence on my conversion was G.K. Chesterton. And one of the reasons that I am so passionate about bringing these Catholic writers to the attention of as many people as possible is because I know how powerful their witness is, and also the beauty of their words in bringing people to the truth, bringing people to the good, the true, and the beautiful, and ultimately, of course, the fullness of the good, the true, and the beautiful, which is the Catholic Church, the mystical body of Jesus Christ.
Thanks. And speaking about that, how has your experience been specifically as a Catholic intellectual? Because it's not the same being a Catholic and being a Catholic intellectual professor such as you are, in evangelizing through specifically literature, for example?
Well, I think we live in an age today where there are three ways of evangelizing, basically. You can evangelize through goodness, you can evangelize through truth, and you can evangelize through beauty. And we live in an age which has perverted and inverted the meaning of goodness. In other words, goodness ultimately is love, but love, as a Christian understands it, is a rational choice. It's rationally choosing to lay down our lives for the beloved. Whereas for the modern world, love is an emotion or a feeling, and therefore irrational. So it's very difficult to evangelize through the power of love to a world that does not know what love is. Although I would say that the most powerful witness is always the saint. So growing in holiness is the most powerful way we can win converts to Christ. And then evangelizing through the power of the true, through the power of truth, requires a belief in the objective reality of reason. And of course, in a relativistic culture, reason is only opinion, and there's no such thing as an objective truth, and there's no such thing as reason, except in a purely subjective sense. It's my reason and your reason. In other words, we now no longer know the difference between reason and opinion. And in that sense, it's very difficult to evangelize through the power of reason if you don't have two people that agree that the truth is somewhere outside both of us. And not something which is inside both of us. But so this is why that evangelizing through the power of beauty is so powerful, because beauty still speaks. It speaks to the relativist who does not know what truth is. It speaks to the relativist who does not know what love is, but it leads them to truth and love through the power of beauty. And this is why great art of all sorts, music, the visual arts, architecture, sculpture, but also, of course, literature, has great power to bring people to goodness and truth through beauty.
And for example, speaking of Tolkien now, in fantastic literature, how can you see the spread of God through fantastic literature? Because it doesn't speak specifically of God in any part of the trilogy or in any part of his literature. How can Tolkien translate or show this love, this beauty?
Yeah, well, Tolkien, in his famous lecture and essay on fairy stories, which was influenced by Chesterton's chapter in Orthodoxy, The Ethics of Elfland, shows that what fairy stories show us is who we are. Tolkien says that the fairy stories hold up a mirror to man. They show us ourselves, who we are as human persons in relation to the cosmos. But as well as showing us who they are, they show us who we should be and also who we shouldn't be. So we have this multifaceted aspect of the human person and human purpose that is made manifest in fairy stories, in fantasy, in a way which is also, of course, made manifest in other literature, but made manifest in a very special way in this mode of fantasy.
Thanks. And for example, Tolkien's life has also been like a special testimony of the spreading of faith, especially in an academic environment as he was, like in Oxford. And as you are a Catholic intellectual in a special environment such as the world today, so how is in the academic world trying to speak of God through literature? It's not easy, it's not common.
No, I think Tolkien gives us the answer. He says that as a Christian, I see history as the long defeat with only occasional glimpses of final victory. We have to understand that this world is, the prince of this world is the devil. That always the worldly are in positions of power in the world, and that the saints are always outnumbered by the sinners. And those who have political power are almost always those who are worldly and secular. So in some sense, the church has never left the catacombs. And in fact, in many ways, the template for the Christian life is to be seen in the gospel, where, first of all, Christ himself, the ultimate goodness, is crucified by the world. Of his hand-picked followers, just 1/12 were actually working actively for the devil. And of the remaining 11/12, 10/12 of those ran away. They were cowards at the moment of truth. So it means that the saints are going to always be in a small minority. But of course, the power of the saints outweighs numerous numbers of those that are following the devil. And that's why throughout history, the power of goodness, although always outnumbered, although always outgunned, continues to shine forth in every generation, those, to use Tolkien's words, occasional glimpses of final victory, even in the midst of the long defeat.
Well, so powerful and hopeful. Thank you. So one question about the relationship in between, because you've written about a lot about the Bilbo's journey and Frodo's journey. How do you see that the spiritual growth of the ordinary man is reflected in this Bilbo's and Frodo's journey?
Well, I mean, there are three aspects basically of who we are, and that is the old Greek word for us, anthropos, and then where we get words like anthropology, and then there's two Latin phrases for who we are: homo viator, man on a journey, or more fully, man on a quest, or man on a pilgrimage, and then you have homo superbus, proud man. The man who refuses the journey, who refuses the pilgrimage, who refuses the quest, who will not be anthropos. So briefly, anthropos, according to Plato, is he who looks upwards. So I sometimes say that the difference between a man, anthropos, and the rest of the creatures, the rest of the animals, is that the animal grazes, but man gazes. In other words, that the animal is basically confined, constricted by its instinct and its appetites. Now, we obviously also have instincts and appetites, and they impact us, but we can transcend and supersede those by looking upwards. And this understanding of anthropos is encapsulated by Samwise Gamgee in The Lord of the Rings, when he says in one of the darkest moments on the Tower of Cirith Ungol, that above all shadows rides the sun. Now, you can only know that above all shadows rides the sun if you look upwards, right? If you see that, doesn't matter how dark things are, that above all evil, and evil after all has no positive existence, it's the absence of the good. Evil is the shadow. So you can see that above all shadows, which is just the absence of the light, is the light itself. So we see in The Lord of the Rings this sense of anthropos. And of course, homo viator, the whole purpose of Bilbo's journey and Frodo's journey is that they have to go on the quest. They have to embrace the struggle and the suffering and the self-sacrifice for others in order to grow themselves spiritually. And then homo superbus, of course, is the refusal. And most notably would be in the character of Gollum, right? Who, instead of being, the way we should see this is if the ring is destroyed on March the 25th, which it is, which is the date of the Annunciation and the date of the crucifixion, this means that the ring is synonymous with sin itself. That being so, wearing the ring is the act of sin. So when we put the ring on, the act of mortal sin, we become invisible to the good world that God made. But we become more visible than ever to Sauron, the Dark Lord, the greatest servant of Satan, because we've entered his world. If we keep the ring on, we fade. We Gollumize ourselves. Sin Gollumizes us. So we become a shriveled, shrunken wreck of who we're meant to be. That's what happens. We become slaves to sin. But if instead of wearing the ring, instead of being ring wearers, we are ring bearers, and it means we are not committing sin, but we're carrying the weight of sin, which all of us have to do because we live in a broken world. First of all, our own sins and the sins of others. If we are ring bearers, we are cross bearers. We are carriers of the cross. And in this sense, Frodo Baggins is a Christ figure. And Samwise Gamgee, as someone who follows the ring bearer, is an archetype for all of us as followers of Christ.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you very much, Joseph. And speaking about this contrast you were mentioning about between light, looking upwards, and darkness and shadow, we wanted to quote a letter from Tolkien, which is letter 131, that says, and I will quote, Without the high and noble, the simple and vulgar is utterly mean, and without the simple and ordinary, the noble and the heroic is meaningless. Then, how do you think Frodo and Aragorn incarnate, personify this phrase?
That's a great question, and I love being hit with great questions. The first thing, of course, is that all of us are ordinary. Compared with Christ. I mean, Christ is the perfect human person. Insofar as we become more like Christ, we become more fully human because he is the most fully perfect human person. So we are ordinary people called to greatness. But insofar as we have greatness, such as a king, for instance, Aragorn, we are called to be ordinary. So we are actually called to remember that first and foremost, above and beyond and before our kingship is our humanity, that which we share with our brothers and sisters. So the ordinary are called to greatness, and the great are called to remember in humility their ordinariness.
Amazing. Great. Thank you very much, Joseph. And Mary, is there other question you want to make?
Well, maybe the last one, because we don't have much time, but thanks. Really, it's amazing to hear these words and share this with our audience. It's really amazing. So one short and big question to finish: why specifically choosing the Lord of the Rings to spread to study as long as you did?
Well, I think the key thing, well, first of all, it's one of the great works of civilization. I wrote something very recently for a website called The Imaginative Conservative, called 10 Books from My Prison Cell. And I imagined, if I were thrown in prison, I were put in solitary confinement and I was only allowed 10 books, what 10 books would I choose? And I chose obvious books, obviously the Bible in the Douay Rheims translation for me, and obviously the complete works of William Shakespeare, the obvious, if you like. But I could not, even if I only had 10 books, I could not be without the Lord of the Rings, because it's so rich that when you finish reading it, you could just start reading it again. And you're never, ever going to saturate it in the sense of getting nothing else out of it. Every time you reread it, you get something new out of it. The key thing about Lord of the Rings is, as C.S. Lewis said, it succeeded in getting past those watchful dragons. In our modern culture, anything which smells of Christianity is immediately banned, effectively, from the secular mainstream. The secular mainstream is basically polluted, and quite frankly, who'd want to swim in a sewer? So I'm quite happy to actually swim in small, pure creeks, and rather than that mainstream. But the point is, if you are going to be in that mainstream, somehow or other, you have to get past those watchful dragons. The Lord of the Rings is the third largest, biggest selling work of literature of all time, after Don Quixote and A Tale of Two Cities by Dickens. And unlike those two titles, has only been published for 70 years. And also, unlike those other two titles, for what it's worth, most people who read Don Quixote and who read A Tale of Two Cities do so because they have to, in the sense they're at school or college and they have to read it. The Lord of the Rings is hardly ever taught in college or high school. People buy the Lord of the Rings and they read the Lord of the Rings because they want to. In that sense, it's the most popular work of literature of all time. And as Tolkien said, and I'm quoting here word for word, that the Lord of the Rings is, of course, a fundamentally religious and Catholic work, unconsciously at first, consciously in the revision. So the world, irrespective of whether it knows it, insofar as it loves the Lord of the Rings, is loving our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Amazing.
So we have now more reasons to continue this work we are doing, and thanks, and you, of course, have a duty to continue to spread this. So thank you very much. We would love to see you one time in Argentina. It's very far, but no one knows.
I've been to Santiago in Chile many times, or 5, 6, 7 times, and only once I changed planes to Buenos Aires. So I've been to Argentina for about 1 hour. It doesn't really count. So I would love to return.
Yes, you would love it.
Joseph, one last question. I mean, your presence, all your words, it has been amazing. But one last question: if we want to learn more about you, about your books, about all of your work, where can we find you?
Oh, thanks for the most important question of all. Basically, if people go to my personal website, which is jpearce, so jpearce.com, they will find my personal website, and I try to post all the major things I'm writing online and news about what I'm doing on that website.
Great. Joseph,
Thanks.
How many times have you read Lord of the Rings?
Oh.
If we get to heaven, there will be no limit.
Amazing. Joseph, thank you very, very much. It has been a priceless time, and we are deeply grateful to you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invitation, and God bless you and your work. You're doing great work.
Great. Thank you very much, Joseph.
Thanks.
God bless you.
Really. It was a gift.
My pleasure. God bless.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.